For more on the president's historic trip, we are joined by the Atlantic's Jeffrey Goldberg. Jeffrey, let's start with the conversation I was having with Senator Johnson about this notion of being rattled. The president, it was kind of extraordinary for the president to talk about the nominee of another party in America. What did you make of that comment?
Well, I mean, it is interesting that he would do that. It's not since Eisenhower talked about Kennedy, I think, like that overseas, have we seen this. What's interesting, there's a small irony here, which is that the president himself has rattled America's allies in ways that we haven't seen by talking about free riders, people who take our money but don't do anything for us. On the other hand, I think the president, on a continuum of rattling, foreign leaders understand, even though they're sometimes distressed by the things that President Obama says, they understand that he accepts and understands the post-World War II international order led by the United States. And so when I talk to people from South Korea, Japan, Britain, France, other allies, they question whether Donald Trump even understands that post-war international order that has brought 71 years of stability and an absence of world wars to the planet.
What is the practical reality of being rattled? In other words, if countries are rattled, what are they? I mean, they could just be nervous and have another drink and move on. What do they do?
We see that in the Middle East, to the extent that our allies in the Middle East are rattled by President Obama's decision to somewhat withdraw from their affairs. We see them going to war in Yemen, Saudi Arabia going to war in Yemen, for instance, that the U.S. doesn't find helpful. That's a destabilizing thing. So what happens when countries don't feel like they're protected by the United States? This is the burden of being the sole superpower. When they feel that they're not protected, they go off in their own directions, and sometimes those directions are dangerous for the United States.
Yeah, Donald Trump says, though, it's good they're rattled. It's good that they're, he talks about being unpredictable and that keeps everybody on their toes.
Well,
why isn't he?
There's one thing about being unpredictable to your enemies, right? Not letting your enemy know what you're trying to do. You want your allies, however, to know that you have their back, that you understand the importance of the alliance, and that if you have problems with them, you deal with them diplomatically, you deal with them behind closed doors, but you don't let them think, you don't let them go down the path of thinking that the United States is no longer there for them. If that happens, they will find other allies, and that could be Russia and China and Iran and people we don't want our friends to be friends with.
Donald Trump met with Henry Kissinger. When you talked about that, the kind of foreign policy consensus, I mean, what do you make of that? I mean, can somebody like Kissinger, who famously said to Governor Christie when he was thinking about running for president, look, you can learn the parts of stagecraft. Is that something Kissinger could tutor Donald Trump in?
I mean, conceivably, anything is possible, correct? I mean, but one of the issues is that you don't have any living Secretary of State now who thinks that Donald Trump is handling foreign affairs portfolio in a responsible way. And it's very, very hard for me to believe that Henry Kissinger believes that this fly-by-the-seat-of-your-pants approach that Donald Trump is taking to talking about foreign affairs, that would sit well with Henry Kissinger, who is obviously a strategic thinker. What we've seen from Donald Trump is not strategic thinking so far.
Right. Okay. Jeffrey, thanks so much. We'll have you back with us on the panel.